All right, so welcome everybody. So today, as I mentioned last week, I will kind of continue the topic that we started last week, talking about the correlation between the Spiritism and some ideas from the Druids, right? So it's not meaning that everything is linked, but it's just to have an idea about some ideas that the Druids had in that time with the Spiritism, right? So, and this topic, what I use the Spiritist Review published in April 1858 by Allan Kardec, right? So one day he had that topic published and he talking about this correlation, right? So between the Druids thoughts and the correlation between with Spiritism. Okay, so this was the basic that I would like to talk, and also the basic lecture, the basic material that I used for this lecture as well was the Spiritist book, of course, right? So try to put some questions from the Spiritist book and with the ideas from the Druids, just to make this correlation more clear for us. Okay, so this is the idea for today. Okay, guys. So moving along, so I just like to briefly recap what is the Druids, right? So the Druids were the ancient Celts, right? So that lived usually in Europe, in this region of Europe. For the idea that they have for Druids was for more than 300 years before Jesus, right? So what they were basically the priests, the teachers, the judges from the Celts, right? So and they were the more knowledgeable people for the Celts, right? So and going through, as I mentioned, so they used to live in the region that the Roman Empire was conquering that time, right? So they were conquered by the Romans, but they still kept their faith, their beliefs, right? So because the Romans didn't interfere on that, right? And from the Spiritist Review from the magazine, right? So that was the base for the lecture today. There is a passage that Allan Kardec mentioned on that, why he was so curious, right? So to talk about that correlation in that time, it's 1858, right? So he mentioned about this correlation from the Spiritist doctrine correlate with the ancient times, right? So this is not new. It was just during the Kardec had the opportunity to put all together, to put in more organized way the ideas from Spiritism, right? So, but not means that it just came as this way, all right? So the Spiritist book was published in 1857, but these, as I mentioned in the beginning, so the Druids' ideas came from before Jesus, right? So, and that's why it's interesting to, as Kardec mentioned about, oh, take a look, this, what I'm putting in the book, but putting the doctrine is not new. We always haven't, right? Some people already had that ideas, that concepts, right? So, and moving to, he mentioned about those ideas from the Druids, the evolution, right? So the progress that we are seeing, and he mentioned, and that's I highlight that about a transition, right? So because we know that we, in our when we are evolving, there is a lot of things that we know now that maybe we need to improve, right? And a lot of beliefs that you have now, we need to take away, right? Why? Because we are evolving, we are getting more knowledge, right? So this is natural for us as immortal spirits, right? So this is a topic that I like to mention, right? So this is a progress that are happening. And just to remind, the Druids use a way to put their thoughts together, right? So they used to use the three things, the triads, right? So they used to use the triads to put a knowledge together. And in this document that Allan Kardec was talking in the Spiritism Review, he mentioned about some of these triads, okay? And I going now, so last week we talked about the some triads, and the idea that the Druids had, that we have basically three circles that we need to move on, right? So the first one is the creation, the second one is the migration, right? And the third one is the happiness, right? So the idea is we were created by God. We need to go into a process, right? That's the circle of migration that we will talk about today. And in the future, when we are evolving enough, we are going to the circle of happiness that we can kind of briefly correlated with the heaven, right? So the happiness. So when we don't need you don't have the necessity to reincarnate again, right? Because we already evolved in some level. We can still come back incarnated, but if we want, probably in a mission to help others or this kind of thing, you will be a high level of evolution. Okay. So in this circle of migration, the Druids mentioned that there is one triad here that I like to mention, that there is three necessary things in this circle, right? So that they mentioned that the beginning, right? So where we are created, the matter of all things, right? And one thing that I like to mention here, the state of need, and the death, right? So there's three necessary things in this circle of migration. So you born, you progress, and you're gonna die, right? And you go again and again, and how many times is necessary for our progress, right? So this is the concept from the Druids, right? So continue on that. You have another triad that is mentioned, that three things for all living beings necessary participate. So God's help, right? God's love, and the attribute from God, that God is fair and merciful, right? So we know through the Spiritism that there is three basic things in the world, right? So God, the creator of everything, matter, and spirit, right? So we know that, right? And through that, what we need God's help, because if God create us from nothing, right? So, and you are here, we need their help to evolve, because we don't have the resources alone to progress. And it's interesting to reflect in this idea in the rational way, right? So considering, okay, let's look back and see in our nature, right? So in our environment. So how is the change that we are seeing, right? So what is the benefits that you get? And we are evolving now in a way, but we need the environment, right? We need the sun, right? So we need the forests, we need a house or a place to live, we need food, right? So our body is so perfect, right? When you see how perfect we are in a material way, right? So, and this is a concept that is interesting to bring here in the basic idea, right? So, And from the Spiritist book, the first question that I brought here is one attribute for God, that God is supremely just and good, right? So this is one attribute that we need to consider, right? Otherwise, there's no fairness, or there's no, if we don't understand the God supremely just and good, right? So there is a lot of inequality in the word for nothing. There is a reason for that, right? So when you move through, you try to understand a little bit more. Okay, the next one. So the next slide, the Druids mentioned that the three causes of the need, right, of the circle of migration. So development of material substance, right, the knowledge, and the moral, right? So, and they have some terms here, this from their language, right? So you have basically three causes here for why we are in this circle, right? Why we are in the migration, right? In the process. So because we need to develop, we need to improve, right? So we need to get knowledge, we need to get the moral, right? To overcome basically what? The evil spirit, or the evil, or what is the bad things. So without such a transition, right? So we cannot be in the last circle, as the Druids think, that is the happiness one. So the plenitude, right? So we need to evolve in these points. Moving along. It's frozen. Oops. All right, I guess it's moving up. Yep. Okay. And for this question, right, so I brought from the Spiritist book as well another two questions and answers here. So the first one is 115, right? So that we are, so the question is, are some spirits created good and others bad? So we are created good, someone are good, someone are bad, right? So, and what is the answer that the enlightened spirits gave to Kardec in that time? No, we are the same level, we are created in the same level, lacking all knowledge, right? So, and we are here to progress, to know the truth, right? So that's why we are here. So this is the answer from the Spiritist book, right? So, and just compare with the previous slide that I mentioned. So what the Druids think, and what the Spiritists bring as well. So they're very, very similar ideas, right? So that we are here to evolve, to get knowledge, right? So intellectual knowledge and moral knowledge, right? And the next question, so the 114. So the questions are spirits good or bad by nature? Or are the same spirits made better than the force that? So, and the answer is, we are getting better through our own efforts, right? So this is an individual, personal path, right? So nobody will be make us better. We need to be better. So the others can help us, of course, right, in our path, but for the path that we are following is individual. Nobody will do things for us, right? So they can help us to do things, but we need to do by our own, right? Otherwise, what is the merit? What is the advantage for that, right? So Viviane do something and I get credit. It's not fair, right? So Julia do something and I get credit. No, it's not fair. She can help me, right? And I can progress on my own, right? I can help others and the others can progress on their own. but the progress is individual. And we need to apply our efforts to do so, right? And in next slides, you see a very good point brought from the spirits as well on this topic. So the next triad from the Druids is mentioned that the 3 primitive points for migration, right? So the necessity, the need, the absence of memory, and death, right? So these very simple topics that they mention, right? So we need to progress, right? The absence of memory is a very important topic that we are questioning ourselves. So if I lived before, why I don't remember? So I would like to remember what I was, if I was a king or, someone important, right? A lot of people would like to know that. But if we know that, okay, I was a criminal, I killed someone, I made a lot of mistakes, that majority of us, right? So we are not so, oh, I was a king. No, probably not. So probably you are a bad guy. Why? Because we are learning, you are evolving, right? So this is the good thing that, and the question from the Allan Kardec on the Spiritist book is, why does an incarnating spirit, us, forget its past? So this straight question, right? And what is the answer from this enlightened spirit? So human beings cannot and must know everything. God, out of divine wisdom, has willed this to be so. Without the veil that hides things from our view, we would be overwhelmed, like someone who suddenly goes from darkness to light. By forgetting our past, we are able to be ourselves more fully. So why? Because what I mentioned, right? So because we are evolving, we are better today than we were yesterday or in the past, right? So means we made mistakes, we learned about that. We still have something ahead to do, right? But we made mistakes. So that's why it's not useful for us to know what we did in the past, right? Because for most of us, will be a burden, will be heavy to continue knowing that we made something bad. So this will not help us. And for God, as we remember from the previous slide, God is merciful, right? So it means that, okay, you made mistakes, but move on, you'll be better one day, right? So that is very important question for us to remind. So for basics from Spiritism, right? So we forget the past because this. And of course, nowadays we know we have a lot of scientific studies about reincarnation. We have a lot of scientific studies about people remembering what they were in the past lives. There is a reason for that, right? So, but it's not for everybody. Most of us, we don't remember, and this is the way that should be, right? If you remember voluntarily, so usually happen with kids, right? So it's okay. So it's just one thing to study, to understand, but to move on, not to be attached with the past life because it's already past. Okay. Continue that. The other triad from the Druids is 3 things that are extremely necessary in this circle of the migration in our life, right? So transgression of law, redemption through death, and development of life and good. And the first topic, when I mentioned, some of you can think, oh, really? I need to make mistakes, right? So yeah, when I first read that, I thought that way, oh, I need to make mistakes. So when you look in this, what is the idea behind that? The idea is through our mistakes, we are learning, right? We should learn. So not mean that we cannot learn without doing a mistake, because I can learn from the others' mistakes, right? So, but the idea here that is because we are evolving, you are making mistakes that are normal, but we need to learn from that, and you go pass, right? So when they mentioned redemption through that, so you passed, and you go again, right? So to develop our life and the good thing, right? So you are able through our choices to choose the good things, not the bad things, right? So in this way, when you talk about transgression of law, we are doing less mistakes than in the past. So means that we're still doing mistakes because you're not perfect, right? But we are doing less because we already learned. It's a process, right? The question for this that I brought from the Spiritist book as well, the question 631. So do humans have the means to distinguish between good and evil? So what is good and what is not, right? And the answers from the enlightened spirit is yes, when they believe in God and truly wish to do what is right. So that's the point that I like to highlight, and I mentioned before. If they truly wish to do what is right, that is the big question, right? So a lot of people can make mistakes, right? So but because they are in the auto mode for life, right? So they are doing, oh, I need to work, I need to do this and this and this. They don't stop to analyze, to review what they are doing, right? And that's why is the answer here is they truly wish to do what is right, right? So that's why the self-reflection is too important. It's one invitation that the Spiritists bring to us, right? To analyze what we did. Saint Augustine recommends us to do that, right? So to review what we are doing, if you are doing the good way or not, right? But it's important to review, to reflect about that, right? And really apply our efforts to do the good things, to learn what is right. Going through. So 3 efficient ways of God, immigration to dominate evil and overcome the one positions relatively to the circle of happiness. So you will be the future, right? So what we would like to be. So the need, the loss of memory, and death. So you already mentioned about this triad before a little bit. Continue on that. 3 things are needed for the victory of man over evil. Man here means humankind, right? So strength against pain, change and freedom of choice. Having the power of choice, man can, or we cannot have the prior certainty about the place where we are going, right? So we need to take a chance to choose, right? So, but we really need to be willing to get the right one, right? To find the right path. And the question from the Spiritist book, so do human beings have free will in their actions so we can do things, right? So yeah. So since we have freedom of thought, they also have freedom of action. So without free will, they would be nothing more than machines. So yes, we have free will. So we can have choices, right? So of course, I'm talking here in the broad way. And you think about, oh, if someone have some mental issues, or if they have, this is are specific cases, right? So for I'm talking about the general case. So yes, we have free will, right? So to choose here, and that's important for us to take our choices, right? And continue on that. The Druids have the other thoughts about the three things may fall in the need of migration, right? So absence of efforts towards knowledge, if we don't want to progress, or if you don't want to think about, to be good, to move along. Detachment from good, and by attachment to evil. So this is the main fall from the need for us to progress, right? So in the consequence of the things, we fall again and restarts the new course of our migration, right? Continuing. So three things, they may necessarily return to migration, right? So we are in our path, in our life, you make mistakes, we need to return, right? So why we necessarily turn to, because our pride, right? So because our deceitfulness and our cruelty. It means we still need to learn. We need to dominate these things on us, right? So when the question on the Spiritism, this is very basic as well. I didn't put the whole answer, but what is the greatest obstacle for our to progress, to evolve? Pride and selfishness, right? So, and imagine that, for example, now as a society, right? So when you're thinking about, okay, so you have people starving in the world, and you have a lot of rich people. Why is not too equal, right? So what we don't do things to help the people in need, or this kind of thing, right? Yes, if you think in a whole picture, you could stop or reduce those needs, right? So for those in need, right? So but because our this kind of situation, our pride and selfishness, we cannot solve these problems, right? Or cannot reduce these problems. And I think, oh, okay, but I can do that. Yes, but we cannot solve the problems from the world alone. We can do our part, and you must do, right? So to contribute in our path for evolution, right? So helping others and everything, we must do that. But we cannot solve the problems for the whole world, right? So this is thinking about the obstacle for the progress. Okay. And almost ending. So main things to obtain the state of humanity, right? So science, love, and moral strength. So this is what the Druids mention, right? So they call these the three victories. So knowing science, knowing to love, and have a moral strength. So it's the three things that are very important for their culture, right? So they call the three victories. And this I brought from the Spiritist book as well. In my point of view, is very, very, very crucial for the Spiritism, right? So the question from the moral progress always followed intellectual progress. So we know that we are here to progress, right? So to evolve, right? And the answer from the Spiritism is the moral progress is a result from intellectual progress, but not means that they follow immediately, right? So example, you can have a person that should be very intellectual, have a lot of scientific knowledge, but they have very low moral knowledge, right? So they don't respect the others, on do things that morally are not right. right? So it means that not the intellectual knowledge will lead for a moral in the same level, what I mean. So of course, when you are evolving, this is the letter A right below, we are able to understand of good, right? So what's right to do, right? And through that, we can, using our free will, we can apply that knowledge and our will to evolve, to do better, right? To learn morally. Okay, so the problem is we are evolving in a way, in science, intellectually, that's not in the same level that morally. So that's the point that we need to reflect, right? So as a society. And so this is a very important point on Spiritism, right? So because we need to be rational, we need to try to get more knowledge, to study scientific knowledge, and reflect, to convert that or to apply that intellectual knowledge in moral knowledge. That's the key point, okay, for us to evolve. As I mentioned, so the three victories: science, love, and moral strength. That's their concept from the Druids, right? So for before Jesus. Right. So, and the privileges of the condition of man. So the balance between good and evil, freedom of choice, we're free, right? And development of the moral strength, right? So this are the topics that I like to bring today, guys. Again, just remembering what I try to do here is to try to link some points from the Druidic knowledge that was before Jesus, and what is the knowledge that the Spiritism bring to us, right? So not to mention that is exactly the same. No, it's not, but there's a lot of similarity, and that's why Kardec on the Spiritism magazine in April 1858 brought this topic, right? I just to bring here for us to reflect, to think that the knowledge is bringing to us in steps, right? So as we are ready to absorb more, to know more things will be revealed to us. Okay, so that's the points that I like to bring for us in this evening. Thank you so much for your patience, and we can start talking about questions or points that we got your attention, or the takeaways that you took from what I tried to present. Okay, guys, thank you so much.